I like it like that, okay? Lighting is sardonic cooking. It's appropriate. Okay, it's the 19th week of the at-home thing. There's no video reviews on my channel, so I decided to do a return to an old classic, just to riff on it again, with a little more background knowledge on the Boaz story. We're going to riff on this movie. We're not doing a riff track, but Last American Virgin, a movie by Boaz, which came out as a remake, an American remake of Lemon Popsicle, and there was a sequel to Lemon Popsicle. It's a book and a movie by Boaz, and it has stars three or four people that aren't really around much anymore. The names are boring. I think like Gary and Phil and Peter or something. And there's a girl, Karen, in it. So it's Karen, so it's totally appropriate. Everybody's talking about Karen. Maybe that's where this comes from. It's the Karen in this movie. Yeah, that's where that comes from. Just so you know, that's where the first Karen is in this movie. So we had to do an update because there's a Karen. Yeah, so there was Mark's Cards and I were discussing this movie on Thursday, and he didn't actually ever see it, but he'd heard about it and he looked it up and he said, well, yeah, obviously in my previous review in September 2015, I did not point out the obvious parts of it, in that the soundtrack was apparently by U2, the Cars, and a bunch of other famous people. And it was the soundtrack that sold the movie, not the movie, the soundtrack. So apparently this film was in the same summer, within months of Porky's, within months of Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, within months of, other movies like E.T. and Chariots of Fire, all the same year. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, a little later. So all these great movies of '82 would come out. I think also at that point that year, I think at that point also it benefited from being released along with several of these. I think Risky Business was also 82, 83. So they have all these movies that are around the same time period and that did better than this movie. This movie is ranked fairly low on the scale of movies. It only made $5 million, and it cost about $5 million to make it, so it broke even. It did not become a hit. It is what's called a cult movie. It is considered a cult movie now. So Brandon Cult Reviews could review this movie. It's a cult movie. Because of the soundtrack, not because of the movie. And the soundtrack is wildly inappropriate for most of the movie, because it is not a wacky sex comedy. As I said in the 2015 review, it is a drama with some jokes in it. It is not a comedy. There's nothing funny in this film. And what happened is there's this the director thing. It was based on this earlier story, which does not have songs like that in it. It's an Israeli film, Lemon Popsicle, and that's fine. That is a drama, and it's set in the 50s, and it has a similar plot, very similar, a similar ending, but it's a better movie than the American version. It's still not great. It's just a better movie. I think the critics that seem to look back on it now, of the 4 or 5 critics that look back on it now, seem to be enamored of the nostalgia of it. They're probably about my age. And they're like, oh, the nostalgia of all the hit songs and these characters, what happened to them now? And that kind of thing. And I was like, well, they didn't become big stars like the ones in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, also 1982. So the critics were going on saying how great the movie was. The ones that said it was great. Usually they said it was muddling. They weren't saying it was great. They were saying it was a cult classic, some of them. But just exceedingly based on the music. They were saying, oh, the 80s songs that are in this, I remember those 80s songs. Oh, these 80s songs were great. Well, sure, the songs were there were hits in the 80s and the beginning of MTV. MTV started in 1980. It's now 82 in the movie, right? But it went direct to video pretty much after it came out. It was Canon Films. And they used whatever songs, the B-side songs of Cars, the other things like that, to sell the movie. Foreigner, I think, a bunch of other ones. They used a lot of their not quite hit songs and put them on there. Oddly enough, the infamous abortion scene. There were several movies that dealt with that subject. Abortion or cancer was like the big end scene, third act scene in every '80s movie. Go back to the '80s. It's like, okay, how we dealt with cancer and things in Some Kind of Wonderful. We dealt with abortion in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Last American Virgin, Dirty Dancing, Grease. Yes, there was an abortion in Grease. She says, "I'm not pregnant" at the end. We don't know how she's not pregnant. They just didn't say it. Yeah. She went to she made it go away. That's what happened. So yeah, it was supposed to be the '50s in the movie. So they did it in the '70s, but it was the '50s. Let's see, what else did they do there? Some kind of wonderful. Pretty in Pink had cancer and other things. There was an unwanted pregnancy in any number of those things. Pickup Artist kind of suggested there was one. So that was typical of '80s movies, as they tended to do this kind of thing. There was also themes of sexual assault. There was a sexual assault scene in Revenge of the Nerds, when the nerd dresses up like the jock, sneaks in, and it's technically an assault. There's technically, and she doesn't get in trouble for it. There's a scene in The Breakfast Club, one of the top teen movies of that time period, in which John Bender's character tries to grab her by the pussy. That's actually in there. It's like, oh, they probably should. Yeah, that's what he was doing. Okay, but yeah, don't do that. But the point is that the music or the theme, this allegedly shocking theme, kid of the '80s, right? I was born in 1970, so I was about 12 when this came out. Probably shouldn't have been watching it at 13 or so when it came out on video. Probably shouldn't have been, just because I wasn't really ready for it. But yeah, looking back, but I also saw Boy and His Dog in the same year, so there you go. That was definitely not a comedy either. Also built wrong. But the point was that the music in this film was... the music in the film misleads you. The music is in the most inappropriate places. The most inappropriate of which is "I Will Follow" by U2. U2, yeah, that's a group. U2? U2? U2, like the bomber, the U2 bomber. And it's Bono singing about his in tribute to his mother who had died. So it's really weird that like why would that be there in the movie as one of the themes and being played over the horrible, like, dirty abortion clinic scene in Last American Virgin? Why is that being played there? Well, she's naked and crying and stuff. Why is that song the song you choose to put there, director? Are you weird or crazy or what? Are you trying to be ironic? Because that's not funny. That's just disturbing. I will follow, wella, 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 I will follow. Just nice sounding song. It's about following, being a kid following their mother around. Like, that's not appropriate there. That song is not appropriate. It's like World According to Garp, where the first part of it is a hilarious comedy and the second half is a dark drama. Well, in this case, it's all a dark drama. They just threw some jokes and some other stuff in because Porky's had come out. Because Fast Times had come out. And they're like, oh, we at the studio, and it is technically the director's fault because he was directing an American version of this movie with Canon Films. Canon Films is infamous for making schlocky movies and distributing them. So they cranked this out as an American version of a Lemon Popsicle, and he's one of the Canon Films people. So, Harvey Korman, that kind of thing. It wasn't Harvey Korman, but it was like that. And it was like he already did that, so they knew what they were getting. They knew that they were going to make this on the cheap movie, and they had to market it. So they're like, okay, let's put a rocking soundtrack. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. Somebody said, "I will follow." That sounds like a good track to put over the part where the boy follows the girl to the clinic. No, no, it's the wrong song for that. Or the cars that the B-52 is following down the street to the other scene because there's a line about love in there. It's a hooker. It's not love. It's lust. You might as well just play like. You might as well just put the Jaws theme in there or something. But that would be funny. Maybe not that. Maybe the Nightmare on Elm Street thing. There have been brilliant uses of soundtracks in movies of the time period. Fast Times at Ridgemont High knew where to put the music in the movie, like the scene where he's in the I'll be a woman soon. I'll be loving you. One of those songs that were in this scene where there's the love scene. Of course, it doesn't lead to love eventually. It leads to something horrible happening. But the song was appropriate in the scene where there was a sex scene. It was like, okay, yeah, it's about sex. The song is about sex. The sex scene. Yep. You don't put the horror song in the sex scene. That doesn't make sense. So yeah, there's a juxtaposition of what they were. What else did I say in my comments here? Did you know Brett Ratner wanted to make a remake of this in 2011? Thankfully, he didn't. So, from the critical reviews of the movie, it seems to indicate that a lot of the reviewers looked at just the nostalgia of it being teenagers wanting to get laid, which was a theme back then, a big theme. It ran all the way into the 90s with stuff like Porky's. No, not Porky. It started in the 80s with Porky. But it went on to the 90s with American Pie is what I was thinking of. American Pie. Which also doesn't technically deliver the goods. They show grinding, but no actual penetration. This movie shouldn't even be rated R, technically, because they don't show actually anything going on, except that it's a dark movie and it's dreary. So Fast Times probably, yeah, there's nude scenes and 2 sex scenes, so yeah, that would technically be PG-13R. But in this case, this movie probably is only R because of the one nude scene. And really the other scene with a hooker, you can't see it, it's dark. They're in the background, they're pretending to do it. You can't really see any penetration, so why is it R? It shouldn't be. But yeah, which is why, it shouldn't have seen it at 12. I did see it later though when I was 16. I still didn't like it. But yeah, so yeah, what am I getting at? The treatise of the movie having a lot of moments that don't appear to fit. They wouldn't technically be they wouldn't be non sequiturs like at the end of they'd be more like non sequiturs at the end of Forrest Gump than they would be the Fast Times or the other ones. Fast Times is a better movie. Some of the critics were like, "Oh, I hated Porky's, but I liked the Last American Virgin." Yet they hated, other stuff more than they liked. They liked this one, but I think they only liked this one because they liked the ending of the guy not getting the girl. But that's the problem with the movie is mainly that it doesn't have a Hollywood ending, and that's not. And then some of them were saying, "Oh, that's so different and deep and everything," but actually, if you watch the whole movie, you know it's going to end that way. It's not shocking or surprising. You know it's going to end that way because they're all assholes. So at the end of the movie, you're just like, "Oh, well, of course the hero doesn't win." Yeah. I think the soundtrack, if it was Journey, would have been better. If they just did the Against All Odds thing, because it was also a bad movie. It also has an ending where the ending is the same. That one wasn't mentioned, strangely enough. Actually, the ending of Dirty Dancing is kind of messed up, too. There's an abortion in that movie. What is it with abortions? 80s. Essentially, Patrick Swayze is a rapist in that movie. And the bad guy. They both are. The good guy and the bad guy. It's just like... There was a couple other movies mentioned. There was My Tutor and Private Lessons. Also, I saw when I was a teenager because I could sneak into the. There was a theater back there that didn't care if we were in rated R movies. Private Lessons. I did. Yeah, it's not good that one too. But yeah, those two movies in that case are actually creepy if you think about it too, because essentially this older tutor lady in the movie is taking advantage of this younger student and having sex with him. That's bad. That's not something you should be rooting for. And you get to the end and you're like, oh, yeah, that's kind of sleazy. Wouldn't she be arrested immediately after doing that? Oh, nowadays she would be. Nowadays they cover it all over conservative television. They'd be like, oh my God, a lady, a teacher had sex with a student, a tutor, Like, but it's more often the other way around and it's sleazy. But there was no abortion in that one either. No. That one ended atypically, and they just kind of walked off. And then there's this other one they really liked called Risky Business with Tom Cruise, and there's the whole Tom Cruise running a brothel basically. That's sleazy, but he's Tom Cruise, so. At the time, young Tom Cruise. Yes, he did. Yes, I was there when that movie came out. Yes, that Mandela effect of the glasses. He takes the glasses off, and then he dances. So that was always that way. Takes the glasses off and he dances. So, but yeah, he was running a brothel, which they made fun of brilliantly in Kinky Business, a softcore porn version, which had Peter North in their title role, and it had a young Tracy Lords. Yeah. In one scene that they deleted in later versions of it. Yes, but they never made a sequel to Last American Version. Why would they try? So it isn't just that I was like thrown off by the cover and the soundtrack, which was completely discombobulated. It was probably also that I wasn't 18 yet, didn't understand what was going on, but still. Looking back on it, it's like, okay, this movie still sucks. It's not good. There's no these. If some of those critics have seen Lemon Popsicle before, then sure they have something to base it on. Like when Femme Nikita was remade in America, and when Point of No Return and La Femme Nikita, the series, or when La Cage aux Folles was remade as The Birdcage. The original's better. Usually, the Ring trilogy made into something else over here. But yeah, so this movie is kind of a treatise on 80s movies, but mainly. So I wouldn't list it as a cult classic. I would say that it still is a bad movie. It's not a good movie. The message is horrible, and horrible people do horrible things to each other. And at the end, hero does not get what he wants. Hero gets kicked out of house. The other bad guy ends up with the girl. Plot of the movie is shallow girl runs through life while these other guys try to get laid. She's not connected to it, although she has an asshole boyfriend, and one of the kids wants the asshole girl. She's also an asshole. So he wants the girl, and she's not interested. So the whole thing is like, he wants the girl. She's never interested, and even in the end, when he pays for the horrible, sleazy abortion clinic scene, he also, we never find out what he's doing either. So, we don't know. We never find out. He doesn't get the girl. It's not like Fast Times at all. He didn't get the girl. Fast Times ends with Spicoli's character breaking in on a random like robbery at a quick stop, and Judge Reinhold's character pours hot coffee on a bad guy. That's how it ends. It's like this movie ends with something else. There is an abortion in there though. Judge Reinhold's character gets his sister. Goes to the clinic, and the clinic is not seen on screen because we don't need to see that, but they imply that to the clinic and came back. The bad guy in that one, of course, the bad guy boyfriend, of course, takes off because he didn't want anything to do with it. Because, yeah, typical of an 80s movie. Although, that is Amy Heckerling, so, who went on to direct 17, an excellent drama. But in the Edge of 17, but in the intervening years, and also Clueless, because that's the same person, might be, yeah. Clueless also had something similar, although there they changed that too. Yeah, and maybe Grease 2 had it as well, because Grease 2, Pinky's character disappears halfway through the movie, is never seen again. Maybe she went to get a coating, and it disappeared. Died because she's gone. She's not in the movie. She does it. Cunningham. Cunningham is Richie Cunningham's brother from the same place that Jump the Shark comes from. There was a Cunningham brother in Happy Days who disappears in the first season and is never mentioned again at all. Fonzie moves in, and later on, Jump the Shark comes from Happy Days as well. That's when Fonzie decided to jump a motorcycle over a shark, and then you have Lindsay Ellis of the formerly of Channel Awesome since 2014. She left Channel Awesome. Lindsay Ellis, who called things that were non sequitur when they were completely out in the open. Like Fern Gully, there's this alligator comes up, big lipped alligator moment. Okay, was there one of those in this movie, Last American Virgin? Probably not. I would say the big lipped alligator moment probably would be, because it's a non sequitur where it doesn't make sense, is probably, if there is kind of one, it's having that Will Follow song over the most depressing scene in the movie. Let's play this song that's happy, and it's about frolicking around with your parent going along, and let's play that over the most dreary, messed up scene, the one that gives the movie an R rating. Let's do that. Was the director trying to be ironic? Near as I can tell from my imagination of people reviewing the movie, none of them remember that scene. So I don't know if they did. They should have. It was freaky. But it's like, yeah, I will follow. Why? It would be like playing the theme to, like Superman over that or something. It's like let's this really, and it makes sense if you're doing it ironically. If you're saying like, okay, in the movie Heathers, there's a scene where the bad guys get humiliated. Excellent ending, by the way. Heathers. I didn't quite get that movie when it first came out. My friends and I were watching it, and we didn't quite get that it was a satire until Mark's Cards explained that later that it was a satire. It was a black comedy parody of high school life. It was a spoof. So when the bad guys do get their comeuppance, you're supposed to laugh. Like, I did a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't a laugh out loud satire, but it's a subdued sort of dark thing. It wasn't like Kick-Ass later on or anything. I don't think it had abortion in it either. 13 did. It's just that was another dark movie. But Edge of 17, which is sort of the spiritual sequel to this kind of movie, and to an extent, 8th Grade, is also, but I haven't seen 8th Grade. Booksmart also. They were not billed as comedies. They thankfully, when they put these movies out, they said these are teen drama. That's what it is, teen drama. You know what you're getting into. If you watch this movie. Yeah, there's a hookup in Edge of 17 that isn't gross. They're the same age. They have sex. But yeah, but the main lead doesn't. Someone else does. The 90s was also an interesting teen coming-of-age movie. There were a lot of coming-of-age movies. I tended to like my coming-of-age movies to have the hero get what he wants at the end, or at least, if he doesn't get what he wants, at least something fun happens to him. It's like I said in my earlier review of that other film. I'd rather watch Porky's than watch Last American Virgin again. I don't know, Porky's is pretty bad, but it is pretty bad. But at least Porky's had an ultimately comeuppance ending. It had the other cop guy in Angel Beach humiliate the main evil sheriff guy, and then it had Pee-wee get lucky on the bus. And they didn't show it; they just implied it. They made like noises on the bus, like they're doing it, And it was like, yeah, they didn't show anything, but they didn't deliver the goods. But but at least one of them got something. Yeah. Yeah. Fast Times Around How the Girl got plenty. Yeah. And Valley Girl, Nicolas Cage went up from there. Valley Girl is also an interesting case. But that one, the soundtrack works. Because that one, it's not necessarily fully introduced as a comedy. It's sort of a satire and character study on Valley Girls. So I knew that going in when I saw it in the 80s. I knew that going in when I was a kid. So I guess this is going to be about Valley Talk. I know what that is, you know. Of course I know what that is. So we go in there, Frank Zappa song and whatever. That's awesome. And it was like a movie version of the Frank Zappa song. It's fine. It ultimately had drama themes, but you weren't blindsided by the drama themes. You were given the drama themes, and okay, yeah, I think there was an abortion in that one too. And I think there was cancer in that one too. They had two things in there, from what I recall. And yeah, so these themes were common in the 80s movies. So this is more of a treatise on 80s movies in general. And yeah, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was just silly. Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton, they're running a brothel. Yeah. Well, she was. Yeah. She was like the ridiculously hot madame that runs a fun whorehouse. It's like, come on, that doesn't exist. It's loosely based on a story that actually happened, but very loosely. But yeah, that was just a fun story, silly romp thing. Yeah, there was nothing bad in that. I don't think anything bad happened in that movie. But yeah, it was just dumb. Yeah, but for some of the critics to think that movies like that one and Porky's are worse than this other movie just because this other movie has a darker ending, that's disingenuous because, no, the lighthearted ending is more crowd-pleasing, so I like that better. Most people probably like that better because look at the ratings. It made $5 million, a little over $5 million. Then it went to DVD and video, and then they showed misleading cover. Apparently, it was released on DVD in 2003 with a cover showing a beach, which is not in the movie. So I don't know where they got that cover from, but it was not in the movie. I don't think there was a beach scene in the movie. They just grafted them into the shot. Faces looking at the girl, which kind of looked like they were ripping off the cover of the original Fast Times movie poster, with Phoebe Cates doing the same thing by the pool. So they ripped that off for their DVD cover. So they did it twice. They did it with the pants. They're coming out of the pants, and the original movie poster was them coming out of the pants. Now, if only they darkly lit it behind it and made them look dreary and sullen and said, this is a dark comedy, or this is a drama. And then not put a bunch of pop songs in it that are uplifting, because that doesn't fit. It isn't just that one. There's a bunch of other ones in there. Because it's not fun. It would be like putting uplifting pop songs over, like taking Lift Up Where You Belong by Officer and a Gentleman, and an Officer and a Gentleman, and putting that over a horror scene. Like, it'd be kind of unintentionally funny. It'd be like you'd have the hacker is coming in, he's murdering the house, chop, 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 with his hacker with an axe, and it's playing Lift Us Up Where We Belong. Where if the what the hell? That wouldn't work, would it? And then, of course, there's the revised Kal Kat ending to the Last American Virgin, in which the hero guy, after being done trodden and kicked out of the building, walks back into the building with a live grenade. Chucks said live grenade into the room where they all hanging out going, ha, we beat you. And then he just walks out, just keeps walking. And as he's walking along, it's the ending from, which I stole from, I believe, not Postal, but that other movie. I stole this ending from somewhere. and the house just goes, kind of stealing the ending from Django Unchained as well. Yeah, borrowing from. But there was an earlier movie that Django Unchained is copying. I think it was falling down. Yeah, that's it. Falling down. And he walks out and they just blow up all the bad guys. They die. The end. Roll credits. At least then he gets a little comeuppance. I mean, he would then be a serial murderer, but maybe the authorities wouldn't care. Maybe they'd be like, well, good for you, kid. You did it. Then it would be the sequel to prequel to American Psycho, which would then lead to 24-hour party people. No, not 24-hour party people. Well, not that's the wrong movie. Yeah, that has a Clash in it. That had a Joy Division in it, actually. Joy Division. But no, it would. Anyway, yeah. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So, yeah. If you liked it, fine. If you hated it, anyway.